Welcome back, everybody. This is Wednesday, November 15th. It is a cycle day 5. Today's discussion is going to switch bases from what we learned the past few days, or maybe even weeks, talking about the economic and political changes in the 1920s. How do Americans kind of get themselves politically and economically set up for a new decade after World War I? Today, we're going to look at some of those changes economically and politically. However, at the same time, we're going to shift gears to societal changes. How does society interact with a post-war world where the economy is bolstered and also politics is meant for that economy to be bolstered? So how do we change socially through that? All right. So I asked the Belgian question, have you ever heard the term of the flapper? What do you think it means? What do you think it is? The picture on the screen really helps as well. But after we start going over some of these areas, I really give a nice little review here. So breezy, slangy, and informal in manner, slim and boyish in form, covered in silk and fur that clung to her as close as onion skin, with vivid red cheeks and lips, plucked eyebrows, and close-fitting helmet of hair, gay, plucky, and confident. This is author Preston Slauson. He gave his idea of a woman at this time period. I also have a video that I showed in class today that looked at women at this point. I'm going to put this video on Canvas for you. That way you can see it when it gets downloaded, so you can see it at that moment. However, it might take a while to download, but it gives you nice little women at this point. So it gives, like, you know, so grandmother, what'd you do as a little girl? And then I'll put that on Canvas so you can see what some of the women did at that point. However, what we talk about then is, why are women seen as this icon? Well, it's the physical difference, like the visual difference that we see in women at this point. Pre-1920s, we have longer hair that was held up. Usually hair went down to someone's maybe waist or middle of the back, and they put the hair up. They took a lot of time to make the hair look nice for public, for when they're out in public. They had very conservative clothing, about 19.5 yards of fabric per outfit, or for each day of clothing that they wear, and very little skin showing, no wrists or ankles on most occasions wherever showing. And they drank and they smoked very little at this point. So, and if they did do it, they did it only in the privacy of their own home. So this is what it was like beforehand. This is like traditional, you know, what people expected women to look like and be. After 1920s, it was a shorter cut, or what we call a bob cut. They had much more liberal clothing, average of 7 yards of fabric, which is more than half of what they cut off with the clothes. Shoulders and upper legs could be seen on a lot of the women, and many women smoked and drank in public, which is different. And again, to rehash back to World War I, Americans at that time, specifically younger Americans, they see this massive war. Now, in history, we can look back at some of those causes and see how it could be prevented. But in the 1920s, they only had 5 years to look back on the war and say, geez, this war started. How could it have been prevented? And they only have a couple years to look at that. You know, so they realized that they felt that the traditional values prior to the 1920s, prior to World War I, led to that war beginning. So they found their own way to cut themselves off from that traditional society, because they believed that society led to war, and the way that people believed, the way that people preached. So that's kind of what they look at and we use there. So they use shorter or bob cut, and it really looked a lot different. And this is like the differences in terms of visually. You can see how the clothing, there's a lot more fabric here than there is here, but you can see kind of how you know, as individuals, you know, change their clothing, the style changed as well. This is the image because women visually definitely changed the most. Men still wore relatively the same amount of stuff, but at the same time, it wasn't a whole lot of differences there at that point. So I do have a video here, I think, if it's still up on YouTube. You can check that out as well. I think it's a Daily Motion. It's not YouTube. It's a different video link, but I'll see if I can get it up for you. It does take a while to load, but when you get it up, you'll see it, showing you kind of how someone changes from this to this kind of in imagery, and you can kind of get that as well. After this was done, we do look at a worksheet. That worksheet is up on Canvas now. I'll add the videos to it so you can see it. But if you go to the 1920s all the way at the bottom, you'll see the document here. Download this. It is a JPEG or a copy of the sheet that we got today, so it appears as a picture. So make sure you print it out and get a look at that. And we only look at questions 1 through 6 on the societal changes in the U.S., and then use a textbook on page 452. So most of the time we answer numbers 1 and number 2 today. That's what we get through today. So if you at least want to get those, and then we'll spend a lot of class tomorrow looking at numbers 3, 4, 5, and 6 as to some of those other changes that occur at that moment. All right. So that's all we had. That's all we did for class. Is kind of we reviewed some of this stuff, and that's all we had at this point. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to email me. Let me know. Again, these videos are up. Do not be afraid to come onto Canvas, look at some of the stuff that we did, and then watch the video to catch up on the discussions. All right. If you have any other questions, don't be afraid to email me. Have a good day. Bye.